So I just watched Sonny Boy. I watched all of Sonny Boy over the last 2 days. And it's really, really hard to describe how I feel about this anime, aside from the fact that I am extremely happy that it exists. It really needs to be celebrated that in 2021, a show that is this creative can still exist in like the seasonal circuit. You know, for all that we talk about, whatever, my VPN just shut off. For all that we talk about these isekai, these fantasy anime that just, or even these shonen anime, just whatever genre you want to point out. These anime that just seem so unoriginal, so unimaginative, or even the good stuff. You know, like Blue Period, I think is a good series, but you look at the adaptation and it's like there's no heart put into it, and then you get Sonny Boy, a show that has so much heart put into it, so much imagination. It's just amazing that it can exist still. It genuinely gives me hope, and it's like watching this, I'm just like, this is what's great about anime. Like, I know not all anime are going to be like this. Like, not even like 1% of anime are going to be like this. But the fact that this can still exist is so exciting, and I truly love it. I absolutely loved watching Sonny Boy. I'm not gonna say it's like necessarily like my favorite amazing like best of all time show. In fact, I don't even think I can say it was the best anime of 2021 because we had Odd Taxi. But hey, let's give credit where it's due. Odd Taxi can probably also fit into that category of a show that was super creative, super imaginative, super original. You know. And by original, I'm not necessarily saying like adaptations are bad or anything, but you know, just the way it was presented was so original, so creative, so cool. But Sonny Boy, just the experience of watching this was just, it was so much fun. It really was just a lot of fun. I'm actually glad I didn't watch all of it in one sitting. I watched the first 8 episodes yesterday, and then it's like I slept on it for a bit, and then I had to go to work later on. So it was like, as I'm at work, I'm just like excited to finish work so I could go home and watch the rest of this show. And it's like, that's a really rare thing for me nowadays. It's rare for me to like be excited to do things, especially like when it comes to just consuming media, you know. Oh, but Sonny Boy, like this show, man, like this is so wonderful. It's so great. And look, I get why it's not popular. I understand why this wasn't like this breakthrough hit. And like I don't know. Like it's hard to really talk about this show because it's so strange. The story of Sonny Boy is obviously going to be the thing that really divides people, and this is a pretty divisive show from what I've seen. I have seen a lot of people like really praise it. In fact, I'm actually looking on my anime list, and all four of the top reviews are 8 out of 10 or better, and the 8 out of 10 guy is Rebel Panda, who generally gives low scores anyway. So, but that's high praise. Like if Rebel Panda is going to give an 8 out of 10, then it must be a good show, supposedly, and then everyone else is like 9, 10 out of 10. So, like, yeah, they're like, it's like, I would say the most prominent opinion is that this is a really good show, but I also have like my friend Smurf in my Discord server who's like, this show's fucking garbage. And I completely understand why he would say that. I would completely understand why someone would watch this and be like, this show is trash because it's so strange. And like being cool visually is one thing. Making sense is another thing, and there are people who really prefer it when something makes sense so that they can actually like grasp it, so that they can be like, what's the point of it? And the thing about Sonny Boy, what's really going to divide people is that there is no point. Like that at least that's my takeaway from it. Like there are things in this show that just happen and you just have to accept them. And there are other things that like get established and seem like they're building up to something and then go nowhere. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this show started as something else when it was like being written, when it was being created, because the first 2 episodes feel so different from the rest of the show. And it's actually a really funny thing, because when this came out, I talked about it on the podcast, on my podcast, the Our Anime podcast, now called the Tokyo Podfathers podcast. And we did our summer impressions. So when this was brand new, I watched the first 2 episodes and I talked about them. And I don't think my assessment of those 2 episodes were wrong, but it's like the show completely, like, it kind of deviates away from what those 2 episodes were. Because those first 2 episodes were really about establishing different, like, power dynamics within the cast, because it's a fairly large cast of characters. It's like 30 characters. It's an entire classroom. It's like 30 or 30 something characters in this whole show. Excuse me. And so the first 2 episodes are like really setting up like who's important, who has the power in this group of people, and also specifically how the rules of the settings work. Because the main thing about Sonny Boy is that this classroom, along with the school building itself, have been transported into some sort of like alternate dimension, and no one really knows what's going on. And there are very, very specific rules to this dimension that they establish. So in episode 1, there are like basically like the established rules of the class. It's like if you break them, then you get penalized in some sort of way. Like you are forced to do like very specific things. Like you have to do long division, where you just divide this problem that never ends. So you're just like writing down numbers on a piece of paper forever. And it's like, what? And then in episode 2, oh my god. Okay. Hang on, I have to interrupt because like I got distracted because I like you see that table like behind me. You saw like there was like this white cloud or something, and I'm like, is that smoke? What the fuck? No, it's just a cat. It's just my fucking big Chungus cat. Look at it. Say hello to Reggie, big Chungus cat. He's a big Chungus cat. So they escape that dimension, but then they appear in a different dimension, which is this tropical island. And then there's another specific rule to this island that they establish, where everything that is given has to be exchanged equivalently. Like you can't, like if someone just gives something to someone, then it's going to explode into these blue flames. So there has to be a proper exchange made whenever something like that has happened. So these first 2 episodes really do like a good job of establishing like, okay, this show's going to be about these different places, these different settings, and then these specific rules that kind of tie into like moral consequences. And it also establishes like these different power dynamics within the cast. So there's going to be like drama as to like who's in control and who's like ostracized or whatever. Like people have different powers, and whoever's power is more useful or less useful like kind of determines power and things like that. Very Lord of the Flies. Everyone was comparing the show to Lord of the Flies in the when this first came out. And I would actually say that based on those first couple episodes, I compared it to The Chocolate War, which I think is a less commonly read book in schools, but I read it, and it's about like someone who isn't willing to conform to this sort of like small sized society, like not conforming to the rules that this society has made up. That's what these first 2 episodes of Sonny Boy are like. The rest of the show, though, like it has elements of that kind of, but not really. Like I thought this was going to be like an episodic series about going to different dimensions and figuring out playing with the rules of these settings. But that doesn't really happen again. Like they pretty much stay on the island for most of the rest of the show. Like it's basically the main theme of the show. And I'm not going to like spoil anything. I don't want to like spoil anything. Although at the same time, it's really hard to spoil this show. It's because a lot of it is so vague. But I'm just basically saying that the show kind of does have some of those Lord of the Flies elements where like there's a lot of drama over like who's in control and whose power does what and things like that. But again, like at some point there are some things that just happen that just kind of like shrug everything off. It's kind of like nothing actually matters. And so the main takeaway from the show is going to be very vague and probably means something different to everybody, assuming it means something at all. To me, I don't really think it means anything at all. I think that the show pretty much just exists to be this really cool, unique experience. What I was saying earlier about the show supposedly changing, I feel like those first two episodes were kind of what the show was supposed to be. And then when they got into the later stages of like where the show is supposed to go over the course of 12 episodes, I feel like it got like too complex, or like they couldn't tell it in 12 stories, or it was just like too convoluted, or they just outright couldn't express it in the way that they wanted visually. And so they just kind of like scrapped it and were just like, fuck it. Fuck it. Fuck making sense. We're just going to make a show that looks really cool. Because I think the main like creative force of this show is how it looks creatively, because there are so many weird like perspective sort of tricks, I guess, where like the environment will itself will be an actual like physical object. Like there's an episode where characters are kind of like pull at the sky and it's just a curtain, and it just changes the background entirely. Like the background all along was an object. If you remember the or know about this like scene in Ed, Ed and Eddie where they just constantly break the fourth wall. Like Eddie is like he holds his hand up and then his hand is behind the sun and he's just like, that's weird. And then he grabs the sun and takes a bite out of it and it becomes a crescent moon and then it becomes nighttime. It's like a lot of things like that will happen in Sonny Boy. It just uses all of these weird kind of like deceptive, perceptive tricks, and it's just so weird, and sometimes just like it's confusing in a fun way where I'm just like, okay, I don't know what the fuck you just did. I have no idea what if I was even allowed to follow along with that. That was so strange, but it was also really cool because that was just something I haven't really seen before. And I think that was what they wanted to do most of all with this show. I think they just had lots of really cool creative ideas and tricks for like a visual medium, and they just wanted to express that, and they just kind of threw the story to the wayside so that they could express that. I could be totally wrong. I would imagine this is also likely inspired by like Japanese literature, but I'm not really familiar with that, or like Japanese more like youth literature essentially, but I have no idea about any of that. I'm not even really sure about literature in general. Like those books that I quoted are like the only books I remember reading from school. So I don't know. Maybe there is a deeper meaning to it. Maybe there's a meaning to everything. Honestly, I'm willing to accept that. To me though, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, I just think this is a really, really cool show and a really, really unique show. But there are even points in the show itself where they do kind of acknowledge that it doesn't really make sense and that there's no point to it. Like, this is like a minor spoiler. It's not like a major game-changing spoiler because this happens in like the middle of the show or something. But they explain that the reason why this happened in the first place is because the principal of the school is God. And God has just simply done this for no reason. That's not me like missing something in the show, misinterpreting something in the show. They just literally say this happened for no reason. Why is God the principal of the school? Complete coincidence. That's just how it is in this show. I don't know. Again, some people can look at that and be like, yeah, that's bullshit. And you know what? I can't even argue with that. That is totally bullshit, but I accept it and I appreciate it because at the end of the day, I thought this was just such a really cool show, such a fun show to watch. Like, even if the plot may be bullshit, I guess, it was still just like fun to engage with. Like, I think this show has like really fun characters. Not fun and like none of these characters are going to be make my mosaic of like the top characters whatever, but like just all of them in general I thought were fun. Like I thought Nagara was kind of fun, like his quiet mopey self. I really like Mizuho, the girl who just has the cats. She's just like such a like it's kind of funny. Like I'm trying to think of like what exactly is she like, and she's just very like normal. Honestly, like she has a bit of an attitude, but she's overall just a nice and just kind of normal person. But I don't know. She was fun to watch in this show. There's this Indian guy Rajdhani who's just like really smart and can seemingly do anything, and he's just always making stuff, and he's just really observant, and he's just a lot of fun as well. Just really fun characters that I really enjoyed watching, and really cool music whenever it's played. Most of the show is silent, honestly. I mean, not silent as in like there's no audio, but like silent as in there's no BGM a lot of the time. No OP, which is interesting. There's never an OP, and there's just an ED that plays at the very end, and it's just a black credit scroll. So, very, very interesting and very stark. And also, the character designs are like vintage. Like they literally got the perfect blue character designer to do to the designs of this show. So it looks like it's something like the show, like the character designs look like they come from the 90s or something. But the show is very modern, just very, very creative, very, very weird, and very, very cool. I am just floored that this show exists at all. Shingo Natsume is a freaking genius for putting this all together. Like, seriously, from now on, like, we know this guy. This guy directed One Punch Man, so obviously he's good. The first season of One Punch Man. And then he did Aka, which is, like, interesting, but like didn't stand out super much. And he did the Boogie Pop adaptation from a couple years ago, which I didn't see, and I heard like very mixed things about it. But I think Sonny Boy should like truly cement him as like this really really cool visionary in the industry, and I think this should really excite anyone who's interested in the Tatami Galaxy sequel, because he's going to be directing that whenever that comes out. That's his next project that they've already announced. So, yeah, Sonny Boy is just terrific. It's fantastic. I think everybody should try this out. Again, even if you look at this or hear about it and think, wow, that sounds like total bullshit, or like this is bullshit, this sucks, I still really encourage people to watch it and watch all of it, because it's just so unique and so original, and I really think it should be celebrated that something like this can still exist in this day and age, because we just do not get enough of this. I do not want to take for granted that Sonny Boy came out in 2021. So yeah, that's anime number 402. Cool. Stop biting me.